Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, the comeback coach. Guys, it's been a while. I've been off for about 10 days doing my yearly reset with my bride and my kids. So we're back. Guys, this is going to be an amazing episode to kick off season 5. My friend that we met for a while and we finally got together. He's stuff that I love to talk about. First responders, podcasting. He's got one of the top podcasts that I love listening to. His YouTube channel is fire. We're going to be talking about supplements, and we're also going to be talking about how to live intentional and not live accidental. Brother, welcome to the show. Thank you so much. We finally got connected. How are you?
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. I see that little live button up there. I'm going to try not to get us canceled by saying some of the things that I probably want to say out there. But I think we're going to have a really good conversation, man. I'm really happy to be the first person on here. You said season 5, right?
Season 5, episode 1020.
Wow. I mean, you're getting to Joe Rogan numbers. Now we just need to blow you up like Joe Rogan, and we're going to see what that looks like.
Hey, I'll take it. And they do call me the G.I. Joe Rogan, so I'll take that.
Fantastic.
So let me ask you a question before we even get started, because I do have a traumatic brain injury. And if I don't ask the question, I will forget. What is your definition of resiliency?
Resiliency to me goes hand in hand with consistency. I think being consistent in whatever you're doing is going to automatically make you resilient in anything that you do, mentally, physically, in a health perspective, and work. So, everybody says like, all right, well, what is being resilient? It's being able to take a lot of pressure, take a lot of hits, take a lot of punches, right? You talk about a boxer, he can take a lot of punches. Oh man, that guy's resilient. He can take a lot of hits. That's life. Life is a bunch of hits. Hits to the head, hits to the body, hits to the soul, the heart, everything. Everything is a hit. So being able to stay consistent in your thought pattern, in the way that you act and behave every day, being able to stay consistent in really how you structure your mindset, consistent with your values. How about let's talk about that? Something that's really gone out the window over the last, I'd say 10 years or more, but really over the last 3-4 years, staying consistent and being able to maintain that consistency is going to make you more resilient. So what's resilient to me? Stay consistent, keep doing what you're doing, know what the right thing is, and continue going down that path, because you're automatically going to be able to take those punches. I'm consistent every single day going to the gym. That keeps me healthy. That keeps me strong. That keeps me physically able and mentally able to take anything that happens in business and life and my family and in my health. I feel like I have a leg up. So that's going to be really my resilient factor.
All right. So we're going to hop back. We're going to get in the DeLorean. We're going to hop in the Wayback Machine. So tell us a little bit about where you come from, where did you grow up, and then a little bit about your law enforcement career.
So I'm first generation American. My entire family was born in Croatia, Bosnia, really former Yugoslavia. For anybody that doesn't know where that is, just a little bit north of Italy, the Italian boot, we're right on the other side. So in that area, Eastern European, hardworking, really, really good value system. It's a Roman Catholic country, a little bit traditional. I grew up Roman Catholic. So when they moved to this country, they came here with like $30. You know what I mean? So they came here with $30 in their pocket. They built a multi-million-dollar bar and restaurant. My other side of my family, my father's side, built a very, very successful cinder block company, which was wildly profitable after the war. And for people that don't realize, in Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, Croatia, Bosnia, all that, there's going to be some military guys in here that are going to know what that is, because they were serving there.
Yep.
There were men and women fighting there not too long ago. I was there in 1997, 98, right when the war ended. And when I was standing on the street in front of my family's property, there were UN tanks driving by. And those were American UN soldiers, and they're handing chocolate bars. I'm like, hey, I'm American. I was just over there. They don't know the difference, So
and that's it was a peacekeeping mission.
Yeah, sure it was.
As you see my air quotation.
Those big air quotes. Yeah. So, that's where my family comes from. We're extremely hardworking. We're extremely proud people. that was instilled in me at a very young age. I was working in my family's bar and restaurant, probably age 8, 9, 10, cooking, cleaning, doing things like that. So I was never really somebody that would have traditionally went into law enforcement. My family did not want that. I grew up in Northeast Ohio, grew up in Cleveland area, first in the east side of Cleveland, later in the suburbs in the Willowick, Euclid area, which is a little bit east of downtown Cleveland. And, grew up pretty meager. We were very poor when I was growing up. We lived in efficiency apartments after my mom and dad got divorced. We never really had much. We just had to work for everything that we got. So that was instilled in me very early. My law enforcement career started as a dare. I've said this on other podcasts and people still don't believe me. I've said it on my own podcast. They still think I'm full of crap, I was doing personal training. I was in college. I didn't know what to do with my life, like most people in college, and I had two friends across the way that lived across the street, and they said, "Why don't you go try for police academy? You're big, you're strong, you're one of us. Why don't you go try out? Since you're really not doing anything, personal training's not going anywhere." I said, "Okay." So I went and try out. Back then, you had to do a physical test, push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, run, all that kind of stuff, and next thing I knew, I was in police academy. 21, 22 years old, and that's how my law enforcement career started. My family was pissed. They did not want me to go to the military. They did not want me to go to law enforcement probably because of two things. One, they knew it was just inherently dangerous, right? I wanted to go join the Marines when I was 18 years old, 17 years old, actually. I graduated high school at 17. This was only a couple of years after 9/11. I'm dating myself a little bit for some of the younger viewers. But 2003, I graduated high school, and I wanted to go and I wanted to serve my country. I wanted to go after those people that killed all those Americans. That's where I was at. And mentally, my mom told me, she said, "I don't want you to go. If you do want to go join the military, go to college first. I'll pay for it." So this was her kind of way of keeping me out of the military at the beginning. "I'll pay for it. And you can go in as an officer and you can lead men into battle that way. So you're not a grunt going right in and doing something stupid," because I was kind of a hothead when I was 17, 18, like most of us, right? So instead, I go to a couple of years of college, don't finish up, and then go to police academy. And then I end up getting shot at anyway in a different way, just locally.
All right. So, let's talk about your growing up a little bit because, I have a lot of friends that come from the Cleveland area. Very hardworking people, put their nose to the grindstone, don't complain. That's why the Cleveland Browns are called a dog pound, because they were just willing to put their head down, go to work. They were very family orientated. But, the mean streets of Cleveland are really the mean streets of Cleveland. It's kind of like me growing up in Newark. It's a great place to be from. So what was that like? Because I'm sure you've seen some shit on the street before you became a cop. So what was it like seeing that same shit now that you are a cop?
Yeah, so we were kind of little shitheads when we were growing up, man. I mean, honestly, we did a lot of stupid stuff. We used to hang out in in a little bit of the hood areas, right? Going into Euclid and Cleveland. When we lived in East Cleveland, we lived in a very, very bad area of East Cleveland, 67th and St. Clair. So if you're aware of Cleveland area, 67th and St. Clair, I don't fit the demographic there. Let's just say that. Okay. So we were a very white European family in a very African-American, very black neighborhood. We don't look right. You know what I mean? So that was a very weird place to grow up. But honestly, I feel like that area, and then growing up in Cleveland in general, because I got to mingle with so many different people, I feel like it was really beneficial for me in the long run. People can talk about, was there racial stuff, and was there any hatred towards you because you're white in a black neighborhood? I never really saw it. I never saw it either way. Was there? Maybe. I don't know. I got along with everybody just like I did in law enforcement. So, growing up in Cleveland, yeah, I mean, there's murders, there's shootings, there's gang members, there's a lot of that. I kind of was sheltered away from it a little bit because I was on the east side of Cleveland, mainly growing up, into the Wilwick, Willoughby, Euclid areas. It was a little safer than it was in really downtown Cleveland. But still, when I became a teenager, we were taking our cars and we were going into the little ghetto areas and we were getting in fights and we were, being kids. You can't do that now, unfortunately. You can't even, I remember driving my first car. My uncle, I believe, thought it was my 16th birthday and it was my 15th. He bought me a car and I'm driving through the streets, ripping up and down the streets in my car, 15 years old. And the cop was like, I'm going to call your mom, go home. That was the worst thing to me. It wasn't, I'm going to take you to jail. It was, I'm going to call your mom, because he knew my mom worked right down the street at our family bar. Nowadays, God, take you to jail. You'll end up on the news. It'll be a whole fiasco. So, when I grew up, I'm 38 years old. Law enforcement was a little bit different. The community was a little bit different. There was a lot more respect, just all around for people. Now it's a melee out there. It's really sad on what has happened to the American culture over the last 10, 15 years. I mean, I saw it through law enforcement the whole time. I saw it progressing from 2007 when I got into law enforcement. It's just gotten worse and worse with these younger generations.
All right, so let me ask you a question, because when I joined the military, I was 17. It was either military or jail, and unfortunately, I got both of them at the same time. But there's something, like I tell everybody, when you join the military and you have to sign your life insurance, there's something about signing that piece of paper, knowing that I may not come back from this. Mm-hmm. Even like the guys that are deployed, a lot of people don't realize that military veterans, we run neck and neck. And for first responders, I love my first responders. My house, we bleed red, we bleed blue, and we bleed green. My daughter last year was a police officer for Halloween. So our house is 100% blue, red, and green. But a lot of people don't realize that most first responders, when they put on that gun belt, they know that they might not come home that night. Yeah. So what was that like, having that, when you get home at night and you take off your gun belt, and then you got to deal with everything that happened during the day. But then when you put that gun belt on, knowing that you might not come home, what was that like, especially as a young man?
Yeah, so I think when I was in my early 20s, I probably didn't think about it too much. I probably was looking more at the fun factor. I think the first time that I really ever realized and recognized, of course we talk about it, but when you realize and recognize when you almost die the first time, I went into a building fire. I've told this story before, but I'm going to this burning building, and I was on the phone with my mom. I'm a young kid, 22 years old, 23 maybe. And she's like, oh, don't go running into the burning building. That's what firefighters are for. And I literally responded. I said, Mom, I'm not stupid. I know I'm a cop. I'm not a firefighter. Well, I pull up, and one of my guys is already inside, and I hear women screaming. So what do? I run into the burning building, of course. Like any good cop, fireman, or military guy, anybody that's brave knows they're going to go save those women, right? And go make sure my partner's okay, make sure the guy's okay. So that was the first time that I really probably felt like, hey, holy crap, I really probably could die from this, because I got massive smoke inhalation. It was scary. I'm a tall guy. I'm 6'3". So, when I got into that building, it was burning. So we're talking, we have maybe, 3 feet off of the floor, right? Where there is not catastrophic smoke to the point where you're going to pass out. So we're dragging these women down this hallway, and it was a very old wooden mansion in Cleveland, in this area called Bracknell. So we're dragging these women down. A couple of times I got a little too high. I almost passed out, and I'm thinking in my head after that, as I'm coughing my lungs out for 3 days, wow, I could have really died there. And that was a really dangerous situation. And then I realized that I probably had a little bit of PTSD from that, because every time that I smelled wood burning, so just people wood burning in their fireplaces, mm-hmm. I would be triggered to that event. I'd get a little anxious, not to the point where it was detrimental to me, but I felt it, and then several other instances in my life, I can still recall, I can still hear screams of people. I can still hear and see, you know, pictures in my head of people that have been killed and things like that. It doesn't leave you, you know. So when I would take off my gun belts when I got home from shift, I don't know if I really thought about it, but thinking about it now, I really wish I would have more and been maybe a little more grateful. You know, I think that not recognizing those things probably cost me some relationships. You know, I was married in my 20s. I feel like law enforcement probably was a detriment to that relationship. You know, whether or not that was meant to work out or not, you know, nobody can know. But the way that I had to behave to try to just keep my mental clarity where it needed to be to go to work. I mean, you can't think about those things. Just like you know, I mean, the military. If you think about what happened yesterday when you're going back out on patrol, I mean, it could be that split second can get you killed or get your men killed.
Yep.
So that's, you know, that's kind of where I think there's a good and bad, right? There's a place where you need to really bury it, and then there's a place where you really probably need to talk about it. The problem with law enforcement and military, they don't really provide those things to the first responders, to the military vets as much as they should. You know, early on, maybe later they do when you're diagnosed with PTSD, when you're diagnosed with depression. But how about right after the incident? How about you almost just got killed yesterday? Hey, maybe go talk to somebody about it and get it off your chest.
Yeah, and you know, and that's something I wanted to hit is, you know, like when I talk to young people and they're like, I want to become a police officer, I want to become a firefighter, or whatever job that they take, and I'm like, do you realize that there's a shelf life?
Yeah.
You have a shelf life. You never see 80-year-old police officers or 80-year-old veterans, you know, active duty. There's a reason. And a lot of people, I think, if before they even got into the military or onto the job, if they know that they have a shelf life, it's going to be a little bit more real. Because, you know, back then when I was a young buck at 17, you know, they always said, you're young, dumb, and full of cum. So, you know, you're going to do stupid stuff. But if I would have known, okay, this career is not going to last me forever, I need to start preparing my mind, my body for the rest of my life while I'm doing what I'm doing. It might have helped a lot of people along the way. Do you agree?
100% agree. The mental part of what those jobs entail, I think, is the most important. You know, and I mean, you're getting kids. These are kids. I don't even consider men adults until we're probably in our late 20s, early 30s, maybe older.
I'm still not an adult.
Yeah, I don't think I am either. Who knows? People keep telling me I'm an adult. I don't know if I believe them. You know, but you know, you're getting these kids that are 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. And law enforcement is 21, 22 that are starting their careers. They're not even mentally prepared for life fully, let alone mentally prepared to deal with some of the trauma that they're going to deal with in those jobs and performing those tasks and jobs. You know, I think that should be a big part of how we structure recruitment and how we structure basic training and things like that. Seeing the people that would have the mental fortitude. You know, of course, it's a numbers game. I understand how the military works. I understand how law enforcement works. They need bodies, right? They need bodies to get in there. They need people to really get in there and do the job and perform the task at hand. So can they be that picky? Not now. Military hasn't hit recruiting numbers in the last 5 years, and law enforcement, they're not hitting recruiting numbers. Nobody wants to be a cop right now. Why the hell would you? After the Black Lives Matter thing, the George Floyd thing, I mean, I came through and I was working during the Obama years, and I thought that was bad. And then I left in 2018, and everyone that I worked with, they're like, you have no idea how bad it got because of the George Floyd thing, because of the Black Lives Matter thing, and because of politics literally tainting and ruining the entire career, the entire way the job performs. You could not do your job anymore. You couldn't even put yourself in a position to really arrest criminals because they just start throwing race cards everywhere. They start throwing harassment cards everywhere. I'm like, I'm lucky I left when I did, because I was a person who was a little bit defiant in law enforcement. I questioned, I probably would have been good in the military. I probably would have been a little hard-headed. I questioned orders. I questioned tactics. I questioned things like that because some things didn't make sense. When they told me not to go work in a certain community because it was considered harassing the community, I said, "Oh, you're harassing this black community because you're arresting these black crack dealers and you're arresting these black men and women." I'm like, "But the entire community is black. I'm not doing anything racist. I'm not doing anything that is off-putting. I'm literally just doing my job in that community, and all the other members of that black community are appreciative for it. They don't want crack dealers. They don't want their kids smoking crack, So when they're like, "Oh, you're harassing that community," I'm like, I don't understand this job anymore. This no longer makes sense. So when I started to question, orders and directives from command staff, that's when I knew my career there was over. It was just a matter of time. So, the last 2 years of my law enforcement career, I coasted. I did as little as possible because anything you did, you got written up for. Well, and they didn't have your back.
And even like I said, I did 23 years in the military. Mm-hmm. And when I first started, we knew the rules of engagement. We knew who the bad guys were. Yep. We knew who the good guys were. We knew what our job was. But when we had people, and I'm not talking just me, I'm talking people that have been over in Iraq, Afghanistan, when you have people hiding in mosques, shooting AT-4s at you and you can't fire back, that's when you're just like, all right, I can't do anything. So I got friends that are police officers, and now they're almost all retired. And I asked them, I said, if you had to do it all over again and you would start now, would you do it? They'd be like, hell no.
Yeah. The answer is always going to be hell no.
Because I don't know. I can't do my job. If you're handcuffing me to do my job, then I can't do my job. So like I had one friend, he was a state trooper. He's like, I'd let people blow by me at 80 miles an hour. As long as they didn't hit 100, we're good. But I'm just going to let them go. And it was like, because if I pull them over, and here in New Jersey and New York, it's even worse because now they have no bail. So it's kind of like, why even arrest them if they're going to be out in the next hour? So I totally get it.
Yeah, that's what happened. They handcuffed the law enforcement officers, and then the people wonder why it's rampant crime everywhere. Well, the cops can't even do their jobs even if they wanted to. They just can't.
So take us to the last 2 years, because a lot of veterans and first responders, they really suffer when they take off that uniform for the last time. Because a lot of it, for me, I got thrown out of the military for being a drug addict. I got back in, was about to be thrown out again, changed my life, blah, 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 because of 9/11. But for me, the day after on 9/12, my whole goal in life was to be the ultimate soldier. And 23 years later, I get hurt. I can't see. I can't shoot. They don't need me. So if I'm not Sergeant Kaufman, who am I? Sure. And I talked to a lot of veterans and first responders, and when they got to hang up that uniform for the last time, they don't know who Richard is. They don't know who Tomo is. So what was that like, and what have you seen? Is it just me?
No, it's everybody that does it. But I think there again is a problem in how our mindset is working with that job. I never identified myself as just a cop. I always kept my individual identity. And I think looking back at it, law enforcement was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I saw some horrible shit. I saw some awful things that will haunt me for probably the rest of my life. Just like most military veterans, just like a lot of law enforcement out there, we've seen some horrible things. It made me the person that I am. I think that the problem happens is when you identify yourself as that profession and you forget your own personal identity. Every single one of us has so many unique skills and so many unique abilities, and we have all these things. I think we kind of forget it because when you become a cog in that wheel, when you become a cog in the law enforcement wheel or a cog in the military wheel, you have your job. and you do your job, and then there's nothing else. It's done, right? So I think you forget a lot of your personal identity in that process, and you have to kind of rediscover it. So, you know, I felt odd. I felt odd not carrying a gun everywhere. I felt odd still having, you know, that long. I'm still hyper vigilant. I still carry a gun pretty much everywhere I go. I can't carry it in some places because it's illegal, but you know, I'm pretty much always armed. I'm really hyper vigilant, but I have to know that I'm not a cop. I have to know I'm not a police officer. You know, I have to understand that I am myself, my individual self. What am I good at? The thing that I think bothers law enforcement and military people is that they don't realize how much they learn in those jobs and in those professions. Military and law enforcement, I think, teach men and women, but specifically men is what I'm talking about. I can only go from the perspective of being a man. Specifically, they teach men how to be hardened, how to deal with stress, how to deal with anxiety, and how to still keep performing your job no matter what the situation is. You know, if you're in a combat situation, you're taking fire, but you still have to load mortars. Guess what? You're loading mortars. That fire doesn't mean shit. You still have to do your job, right? So, you know, when it comes to people not understanding what to do with life after law enforcement and military, man, I can't wait to get in front of more and more people and just make them realize that we are so properly equipped for anything. Business, entrepreneurship, politics. I mean, the most stressful shit that you can possibly imagine in culture, we already dealt with way more stressful shit. All you have to do is just realize it and just be like, well, wait, no. That's not stressful. My business problem that I have right now that may lose me some money or lose me some employees, I'm thinking this is detrimental and stressful, and oh my goodness, wait a second. That wasn't, remember the time I got shot at? Remember the time I went in the burning building? Remember the time that I had to fight that guy and I almost died? That's not stress. That was stressful. This is easy. So I think if you switch the mindset of how people think about what they've experienced in law enforcement and military, first responders in general, man, we've been through the ringer already. There is literally nothing that you can't handle, but you have to realize it. So you have to get in front of these people and make them realize that you are more well equipped than any of these college people that went to college for 4 years, 8 years, whatever. What, they dealt with stress of a test? Come on. You know, the military guys always, I mean, look at the top CEOs in the country. Most of the top level CEOs in the country, most of the politicians coming out right now, the people that are leading this country and leading the business world all have one thing in common: military experience. Why is that such a positive thing? They realize that they can literally get through anything. And when you have that mindset as a man, you're done. You just beat out everybody.
And plus, I think, you know, like my sister, my mother-in-law, my dad passed on Valentine's Day, and then we just had to put my mother into assisted living, and everybody around me is freaking out, and everybody's stressing out and crying, and I'm sitting there stoic, and I'm going, okay, guys, what's the worst case scenario here? And you're like, how can you be so calm? Because we've been through all the other shit. So if we break it down to start saying, okay, what's worst case scenario? And then, because like they say, you know, most veterans and first responders, when the bullets start flying, we slow down. Mm-hmm. And we can start saying, okay, I need to get safe. I'll figure everything else out after that. So I love exactly what you're saying. But before we go any further, because I want to talk a little bit about your transitioning for being a police officer to the civilian world. Guys, I just want to thank our sponsors. As you guys know, I was with GNC for over 30 years. I was in health and fitness industry for 30 years, and the military 23. I love pre-workouts. I love coffee, but they either tasted like ass, or as soon as I drank it, I had to run to the bathroom. So I decided to come out with my own coffee. It's called Vertical Momentum Coffee. 100% made by veteran hands. All of it is hand roasted. Twice the energy, twice the caffeine, no crash. Best part of it, for every bag that I sell, 100% of the proceeds go to help veterans and first responders struggling with PTSD and homelessness. So, guys, if you love coffee with a mission, write coffee down below and I'll get that information to you. And as of right now, we're actually building a place called Forward Operating Base Rush, where we're going to be able to take 12 veterans and first responders and their families, take care of them for 1 year, physically, mentally, spiritually, and financially at zero cost to the veteran or first responder. So, guys, if you love coffee with a mission, write coffee down below. I would love to get you some in your coffee and in your cup. Also, guys, if you don't know much, I didn't know that veterans are the #1 minority in the United States. Only 2 to 3% of the population has ever worn a uniform to protect the other 97. So, guys, we are the best of the best. If you hire somebody, if you're a CEO, CFO, you hire a veteran that has only, and I never say only, but we want to try to 4 years of the military are spending over $400,000 for that veteran for leadership. So you're getting a leadership, a gentleman or a girl that served 4 years. You're getting 4 years of leadership. So when you hire a veteran, you're getting the best of the best, and you also get huge tax breaks. So if you guys want to hire a veteran, or if you are a veteran looking for a job, let us know down below, write veteran, and we're going to make sure that we take care of you. So, brother, let me ask you a question, because I got hurt on duty, and one day I had my vision, I had my career, I had everything going for me. The next day I'm blind and I don't have a career, and I didn't know who I was. So they discharged me on Memorial Day 2012, and that was the day that I attempted suicide, because I didn't know who I was and I didn't feel like I have a future. So what was that like getting out, and how far ahead did you start preparing for your future?
So it was kind of abrupt for me. My story is a little bit hectic. I was kind of coasting my last 2 years of law enforcement, right? I got to a point where I'm like, I need to do something else. The only thing that I know, right, is law enforcement. So I try to go to the FBI. So I apply for the FBI. I get through every single part of it until the physical test. And then I get notified out of nowhere that I got an internal affairs investigation at my agency. And I said, what the hell? What internal investigation? What did I do now? Right? I'm like thinking in my head, what did I do? Well, I found out that they found out that I was applying for the FBI. The agency that I was working for is unfortunately notorious for doing this to people that are trying to get out of that job. I don't know why. I know you're nodding your head. It's freaking weird. I don't understand why they would do that. It still boggles my mind. So I apply for the FBI, and then I get this IA. I have to call the FBI recruiter, and I'm like, hey, I got an IA. He's like, oh, we were advised. He's like, they called us right away. He said, you can't move forward until this IA clears. So I go through all this shit. It was about some bullshit domestic violence that wasn't a domestic violence. And they're saying that I should have taken a report, basically some obscure rule that nobody follows in law enforcement. If it's a domestic call, you're supposed to take a report on every single domestic violence call. Except this one was a complete lie and complete fabrication, and it was complete bullshit. So I put notes in the call like everybody else does, like we usually do. It got me hemmed up. So I'm looking at this and I'm upset. And I'm going through this internal affairs investigation. And hindsight being 2020, obviously it worked out better for me that I didn't go to the FBI and stay in the law enforcement career, but I was mad. And I got so mad that I basically said, you know what? I'm done with all law enforcement. So they did me a favor, really. So I get through this internal affairs investigation. I get finished with it. The chief of police at the time basically tells me, he's like, hey, everything's going to be fine. We're going to get you into field training, make you a field training officer. We'll fast track you, get you promoted. You just need to make sure that you follow the rules and do things how we want it to be done. Blah, blah, blah. And I literally said, thank you. I really appreciate that. Very kind of you. And then I handed him my resignation. My FOP, my union rep basically was like, did you seriously just resign after we just saved your job? I said, yeah, I'm done with it. And it was the best decision I could have ever made.
But let me, as you see, I'm writing stuff down because whatever is very important to me, and I want to make sure that I get back to it. But now, if I go stand on my front porch, I stand in the shadows where the Twin Towers once stood. So for me, 9/11 changed my whole life. And I'm not going to mention any names. I'm not about to get sued or get looked into. But, we know that the alphabet soup don't talk to each other or don't get along with each other. And that's one of the main reasons that 9/11 even was able to happen. So it's amazing how a couple entities, not just one, two or three, they're the ones that are supposed to be protecting us, but they're still fighting each other like the McCoys and the Hatfields and the McCoys. So they're not helping the situation at all, right?
No, it's a complete, honestly, law enforcement in general in this country is a complete disaster. There is no communication, even though they say there is now. Oh, post 9/11, they're communicating. No, they're not. I've dealt with federal agencies throughout my law enforcement career, which is all post 9/11. The communication is atrocious. So the fact that they're so spiteful against each other that they don't want somebody to move up or move away from the agency, it doesn't make sense to me, But either way, they did me a huge favor. They did me a huge favor because I left law enforcement. I went and worked for a different medical clinic. And this is in the bodybuilding. And, I was a bodybuilder since age 17. I competed. So from 13, I started lifting weights. At 17, I started competing. I competed until I was about 21. Then I went into law enforcement, but I never stopped bodybuilding and working out. I was always into that whole realm. The story I tell is kind of goofy, but when I was 18 years old or so, I think 19, I told my coach, the guy who was training me in the gym, I said, I want to be a professional bodybuilder. And he said, okay. And I said, I know I need to take steroids. Literally what I told him. 18, 19 years old, I said, I need to take steroids to be a professional bodybuilder. I'm not stupid. I know these guys are taking a whole bunch of steroids. This is in the early 2000s, the Ronnie Coleman era. These guys are monsters. So this is what I'm seeing in the magazines. I know what's going on. He tells me, he said, I'll make you a deal. He said, go get your labs done. So I go get my lab work done, which is nobody was doing this back then. We're talking 2002 to 2006. Nobody's doing this yet. So I go get my labs done. I check all my hormone levels. My testosterone level was right under 1500. If you look at the scale of testosterone, it's like the normal is between like 300 and 900. That's recent, by the way. That's changed. Medical, we can talk about the big pharma, why they changed that. But my testosterone, ultra high. I'm 19 years old. And he's like, you're basically naturally on steroids right now because of your age and you are performing at max. He said, you don't need to touch anything. I said, okay, but when I'm ready, I'm going to need to take them because I want to be a pro bodybuilder. So that triggered something in me where I started studying hormones, health, wellness, metabolic processes, the way that the body builds muscle, what muscle is. So I go through this gambit. I'm reading every book, every magazine, every manuscript. Internet was not as extensive as it is now. So I had to search for this stuff. So I learned everything there is to know about hormones and the body process and anabolic steroids and everything. So let's fast forward. I leave law enforcement. I find this medical clinic that I'm friends with the owner. I, at that point, was on testosterone therapy because after 10 years of night shift, my testosterone level dropped to almost nothing.
Yep.
We can get into that whole conversation about military and first responders. Our lifestyle and our job kill our hormones. Most of the patients at our clinics are military or ex-military or first responders. We wreak havoc on our own hormone profile. So I'm 31 years old. I should not be on testosterone reasonably. I shouldn't be even needing to touch it until I'm in my 40s. But my career has tanked my hormone levels. So I go to this clinic. I say, hey, do you have anybody for sales and marketing? He says, no, but I could really use one. And he's like, you have anybody in mind? I said, me. He said, you're a cop. What are you talking about? I said, I resigned. I need a job. And he's like, how much do you want to make? I said, can you match my police salary? You know, cops don't make a lot of money. So I showed him my police salary on a piece of paper, and he laughed and he hired me. So there I am. And now I am in a new career, basically making content, making videos, talking to new prospective patients. And because of becoming kind of an autodidact in hormones and health and wellness, learning from all these books for over a decade, I came in basically almost as an expert, you know, and I just took that. I helped build that clinic from like 700 and some odd patients to almost 4,000 in 9 months. And, you know, he ended up making me a partner. We ended up having to part ways due to some legal things and some legality things that, you know, are still in the mix in the law enforcement realm, if you get my drift. Some unsavory practices were happening there. And then I was forced to basically say, well, am I going to go back into law enforcement, or am I going to go and start my own business in this industry that I have now learned to love? Obviously, I went the latter, and I started my own clinic brand. I put everything that I possibly had into it, including $100,000 in credit card debts and loans, and not paying my mortgage, not paying my car notes. I had a partner in the beginning that helped finance portions of it that I ended up separating ways with. But I mean, I risked it all. I had to go into it. But, you know, I'll go back on what we were talking about earlier. If I didn't understand how to deal with stress at that point, from all those years in law enforcement, dealing with all that shit, right? I don't know if I would have made it. I don't know if I would have gotten through it, because I wasn't paying bills. I would go in thinking I had money for groceries, and I didn't realize my car insurance bill came out. And then I have a cart full of groceries and declined. I checked my checking account. I have $12. I'm like, I would just literally leave the cart, then I just walk out, embarrassed. You know, I slept in my office, and not this office, but the office that we used to have down the road. I slept on an IV chair for many nights, you know, but that kind of stress and anxiety, I was prepared for it. You know, that law enforcement career got me to a point where I could mentally get through that, you know? So I want all the law enforcement and the vets out there to know that you are way more prepared than you realize, you know, to get into something that most people can't. Entrepreneurship is not easy, but I definitely had a leg up.
Well, like, let's, you know, if anybody ever goes on my timeline, you'll see 6 or 7 former Mr. Olympias and my friends, you know, Lee Haney, all those guys. Because back in the 2000s, especially in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, that was where the Schwarzenegger Classic came. So yep. That was the hub, you know, of bodybuilding for a week at a time. But for me, and people know my story, you know, I'm a 9th grade dropout. I didn't even finish 9th grade. But, you know, even when I was in the military, I'm reading books on anatomy, physiology. I think I've had like 9 subscriptions to every bodybuilding magazine that ever came out. By the way, Muscular Development, love the magazine. Rick Collins, greatest writer ever. But for me, I got so addicted to supplements. I got addicted to learning about, you know, like you said, all the different systems in your body, the endocrine system, you know, all that stuff. And I realized that as a veteran, while everybody else was, when I was deployed, while everybody else was out at the bar, you know, I'm under the bar, and, you know, I'm taking my pre-workout, I'm taking my creatine. So, and I got addicted to bodybuilding. And like I said, I competed a couple times. I love bodybuilding. But even if you look at today's bodybuilders, I'm an old school guy. You know, I still love my Sean Ray. You know, Kevin Levrone. You know, I still look at Dorian Yates. I look at, you know, Schwarzenegger. Even at his biggest, he was 240 pounds, 6'3", 240, and he looked phenomenal. Frank Zane looked phenomenal. Bob Harris looked phenomenal. But if you look at the mass monsters today, you're like, yeah, I can't relate. I don't get it. So So talk to us because, like you said, your stress hormones are way out of whack. Your sleep is totally shot. So when a lot of people, when they retire out, then they realize, okay, well, my numbers are so low. And they're like, well, just give me some Anavar, give me some Anadrol. And you're like, yeah, let's not do that. Let's get your numbers checked. So when you said, when your coach said, all right, let's check your numbers, he did something for you that set you up for life because he wasn't having you take the easy way out, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, he cared. He cared about my health. He cared about my wellness. And he was the same. He was, obviously, he was much older than me. He was probably in his late 50s, early 60s when he took me under his wing, as a teenager, 13, 14 years old, skinny, lanky kid that wanted to, bodybuild and gain some strength, gain some muscle. And he was around the era of the 80s, the 70s, the 60s. He saw those guys. So he understood, like, hey, no, you don't just start taking a whole bunch of steroids. You got to build a frame. You got to build, what you can naturally. You don't even know what you can naturally achieve. It drives me absolutely nuts. I mean, you see on my Instagram, one of my last videos talking about bodybuilding and open bodybuilding and mass monsters. This was related to dating. Oh my goodness, go read the comments on there. From most of the women agree to what I was saying. I was talking about, 99 out of 100 women do not want to have anything to do with an open bodybuilder because they're just massive freaks. They're not attractive to women. That was the point that I was trying to make. It was a larger dating conversation. And all these women agreed, including bodybuilders, including professional bodybuilding women who I'm friends with.
Yeah, me too.
And then it's a bunch of 16 to 25-year-old little shithead kids, mostly men. Oh, they don't do this to attract women, and we do it for ourselves and this and that. I'm like, you guys are missing the whole point. You guys missed the entire conversation.
But also because, I've had several bodybuilders come on the show, and one of my best friends owns the best nutrition company in the world, NutriBio, Mark Lazier. But we talk about bodybuilders, a lot of them, because they're so juiced up, kind of like Jose Canseco, they're all show and no go, especially when it comes to the bedroom. So
it does happen.
Guys, don't get it twisted.
It does happen. Yeah. I mean, listen, I love the freaks. I wanted to be Ronnie Coleman when I was a teenager. I wanted to be Ronnie Coleman probably when I was still in my early 20s. I wanted to be massive. I wanted to be a freak. I wanted to be Mr. Olympia. That's what I wanted to be. So I understand the appeal.
Now, because of the shape that he's in, would you want to be Ronnie Coleman today?
There's a great question. Ronnie Coleman is now crippled. Ronnie Coleman has so much health issues. I mean, what's his quality of life? It's not there. If you ask him, he still says he has no regrets. He's like, my one regret is I didn't squat this many more reps on that 700-pound squat. Does he really mean that? I don't know. Does he have to say that? I don't know. I've spoken to Ronnie Coleman a couple times. He's been nothing but cheerful and happy, even with all of his medical issues. It's a personal choice. People jump off buildings with parachutes. People jump off bridges with bungee jumps. People jump out of planes with parachutes for fun. Would I do it? No, it's not worth the risk. It's not exciting enough for me.
But now Ronnie is a retired law enforcement officer.
He is. He did same amount of years as me, 12 years, I believe, or 13 years. And he was in law enforcement while he was bodybuilding. But people also don't realize that when Ronnie became a pro bodybuilder, everybody says this is bullshit. It's not. It's not. Ronnie Coleman became a professional bodybuilder. He was natural. The guy never touched a steroid when he became a pro. He was on Olympia stages before he ever touched a steroid. He's a freak. He's one in a billion bodybuilders. You'll never see it again in your lifetime.
But a lot of people also, and I'm sorry if I'm taking up a lot, I could just geek about this stuff.
Oh, I love this stuff. This is my
but a lot of people don't realize that in Ronnie's first 13 competition, he didn't even place.
Nope.
So who would ever thought that he'd become the greatest bodybuilder of all time if he quit?
Yeah, I mean, he looked amazing as a as a pro naturally, in my opinion. I think that is what, I mean, if he was, let's say if Ronnie Coleman in 1981 showed up on stage naturally, he'd have won Olympia. In 1982, probably won Olympia. Up to 84, probably would have won Olympia in that natural state, you know. But in the 90s, post Dorian, he really wasn't going to stand a chance until he started taking some of the steroids. And I mean, we see what happened. He turned into probably the greatest of all time, you know, the most winning of all time. People can argue, you know, who's better, Ronnie Coleman, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Phil Heath, who I'm friends with. You know, Phil, probably the most beautiful bodybuilder in the modern era, in my opinion, until he started having his health issues, you know. But the conversation, the larger conversation about, you know, what should bodybuilding be? What we're seeing today is grotesque. I'm sorry. I'm a bodybuilding fan. What we're seeing today in open bodybuilding is grotesque. It's wildly unhealthy. These guys are dropping like flies, dying, you know. Now the guys in classic physique, that's what bodybuilding probably should be, you know. I had people commenting on my social media, well, what about Chris Bumstead? I'm like, Chris Bumstead's not an open bodybuilder. Chris Bumstead is a beautiful physique. He looks like they did back in the 80s, back in the 70s, maybe into the early 90s. You know, he's a different type of person. But look at what he's getting compared to the open bodybuilders. They should.
I also give a shout out to my friend Vinny Galani. He's in his upper 50s and he just competed at the Masters Olympia. But he's in his upper 50s and he still looks great. Mm-hmm. Because he never really took it to that nth level to where, you know, well, I know a lot of guys, you know, like Kai Green, you know, they would gain 50 or 100 pounds mm-hmm. and then have to lose it all. So, you know, when they retire, they're kind of like their bodies are just shot. So I want to give a big shout out to Vinny because, you know, even though he's in his upper 50s, he still looks great and still has a small waist because he takes care of himself and never decided, well, you know, now that I'm retired, you know, I'm going to start eating cheeseburgers and hamburgers, and I'm going to gain all that weight and start being unhealthy. Because if you see a lot of the bodybuilders that competed back in the day, if you see them now, like Lee, not Haney, the other Lee, Lee Priest, if you see him now, you're like, oh my God, what just happened?
I think he tried to get back in shape recently. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, listen, there's a big difference between being healthy, staying in shape, and what bodybuilders do. Now, that being said, I love the freaks and I understand what it takes to be a freak. I get it. But I don't think that is ever going to be mainstream. I don't think it's ever going to be a profitable venture as a industry. You know, I mean, people are, oh, they made 500,000. 500,000 is what some of these soccer players and baseball players make in one game. You know what I mean? And football players. So you're saying 500,000 for sacrificing probably decades of your health for one show, making 500,000 is worth it? That's not a lot of money to me. You know? Now, if they're making the money of these professional athletes, these big boy professional athletes, now I can understand. I get it. But until it gets to a level where it's actually appealing to the mainstream audience, it's never going to get mainstream. It'll never go back on ESPN. It was on ESPN, Richard, when you and I were probably watching it, remember, in the 90s?
Yep, Corey Everson and her husband. Yeah, I loved it. But, you know, I also have friends on my friends list, you know, Michael Hearn, Clark Bartram. I mean, this guy, Clark Bartram, is in his 50s. He's been in over like 250 magazines, and he still walks around at like 6% body fat.
But that guy's a freak. And Michael Hearn is a freak. But those guys are not normal. They're 1 in a million. But
it's something that I want to talk about now. I want to hit on is because I've had, you know, both of them, they're friends of mine, and I've talked to them all the time. They live intentional. Mm-hmm. You know, whatever, like for me, once I decided January 1st, 2023, that I want to start living intentionally. I think in any success in life, if you're intentional about what you do, then you're going to be successful. Like, what's his name? Like one of the Mr. Olympias, you know, a great friend of mine, he measured every piece of food that he put in his mouth He knew, okay, if I eat this, I'm going to get this. So they live intentional. Mike Heath, you're never going to see him just on a Wednesday eating In-N-Out burger for breakfast, lunch, and dinner if he didn't plan it out and put it in his planner. So talk about being intentional with your health. Like, to have a cheat day, yeah, if you plan that cheat day out, if you know, okay, Sunday's my cheat day, I eat whatever I want. So why eat a piece of pizza every week, every day of the week, if I could just have a whole pie on Sunday? So talk about living intentional.
Yeah. So intentional living is just the same thing as living with consistency. You know the goal at the end of the day. Is this going to help you get to your goal, or is this going to hinder your goal? So when you live with intention, and that goes with everything, not just health, and not just business, not just with family, you know, you can unpack that whole mindset, that whole idea. What is it that you're doing to make your family better? Are you making your relationship with your children better, your relationship with your wife better? You know, so being intentional about your actions with those things, being intentional about your actions in business. My favorite thing about today, Monday, is that I have meetings. I have meetings from 9:30 a.m. and I am all the way through until 6 p.m. straight. I have no breaks. My meal is still sitting right here, Rich. I didn't eat it yet because we had to jump on this podcast. That makes me very happy because I'm living my life with intention. I know exactly what needs to get done, right? I may be behind a little bit on my meal, but it's not going to hinder me. I'll just eat it as soon as we jump off this, you know? So when it comes to your health and wellness, yeah, you better believe that you need to live intentionally. You can't just eat a piece of pizza whenever you want. You can't just, you know, go eat a donut whenever you want. You can't just go drink alcohol or take this drug when you want. That's an immediate dopamine release, right? That's what people look for now. And that's the problem, I think, with modern society, is that everybody wants it now. Social media has made it instant, right? We want instant gratification. We want instant dopamine from this phone in our face, you know, and to live intentional is to understand that you have to leave something behind, leave some pleasure behind, or leave some pleasure for later and kind of suffer for it first. And it makes it that much sweeter, you know? What happens when you don't eat that cake or don't eat that pizza or donuts or whatever you don't eat it for a month? How good does it taste at the end of that month when you get to have it that one time at the end of the month? It's like Christmas morning, right? It's the best thing you ever tasted. This is amazing, even if it sucks. Even if it's a shitty burger, it's still the best burger ever because you went a month with resisting that need or that want in having it. So, you know, when it comes to intention, you need to do that with everything in your life. And when you do that, and when you limit all of those pleasures day to day, and you live with intention, understanding what your immediate goal is and what your long-term goal is and where you're really wanting to head, sky's the limit. You can do whatever you need to do as long as you understand that you have to say no to that pleasure right now so you can have that pleasure later. And I'll tell you what, that pleasure later is going to be 100 times sweeter.
Okay, but now something I want to hit on because you said it, and I do this every day. 6 o'clock, you're not going to be able to get in touch with me. I'm done. It's a wrap. It's over. I'm spending time with my wife. I'm spending time with my kids because that's a time that I plan out. And I learned from my friend David Meltzer. He said, you know what? You need to plan out your day so you make sure that you have time for your family, the most important stuff. So 6 o'clock, you're not going to get in touch with me unless it's an emergency. So, you know, even like James Clear wrote in his amazing book, Atomic Habits, you know, the way you set up your day is either to fail or to succeed. And for me, I have certain things I do before I go to bed, certain things I do when I wake up to set myself up for success. So talk about you, about what your morning ritual is and what your evening ritual is to set yourself up for success for the next day.
So I don't succeed at this every day. I will admit that, but this is my ritual. So in the morning, I wake up. I'm a 5 a.m. riser. If I open my eyes anytime after 4 a.m., I'm getting up. I will not go back to sleep for less than an hour or an hour. So, people like that little bit of comfort. Oh, my alarm doesn't go off for another hour. Let's go back to sleep. Let's nuzzle up in that pillow. That's not me. I go for it. If I'm up, that means my body woke up for a reason. Let's get after it. Now we're an hour ahead of schedule. We're doing good stuff. So I do a journal first thing in the morning and in the evening. First thing in the morning, what I do is a gratitude journal. So I go into a grateful state of mind, which I see you fist pumping, Richard. You're all about that. So going into a grateful state of mind first thing in the morning is an amazing thing. And you don't have to write it down if you don't want to. I suggest you do. But one thing that I cannot stand when people get negative first thing in the morning. I will walk away from the situation. I'll walk away from a conversation. The fact that you are alive, the fact that you are breathing, the fact that, whether you believe in God or not, God gave you another day on this earth. The fact that you are here. So many people went to bed last night and they did not wake up. So what are you really bitching about, right? That's the number one gratitude thing that you should be looking at. And then when you start looking at everything else, people forget what the rest of the world is like. You've seen it. I've seen it. You're waking up more than likely in a house. You're waking up with $1,000 cell phone, computer in your hand. You're waking up probably in air conditioning. You have a car outside. You have a job. You have a wife, girlfriend, husband, boyfriend, whatever. If you don't, they'll come. There's a lot of people out in the world. You have children. You have other family members. You have so much to be grateful for. You have food. You have clean water. We have become so conditioned in comfort in this country, in the United States, that we forget how fortunate we really are. So waking up with gratitude, number one thing in the world for me. I wake up, I list it. I love writing it because I find new things to be grateful for every day. And then I can look back, in case I forget one. The rest of my day, very, very structured implementation. I go to the gym. I'm there by 5:30 or 6 in the morning. Depends what time I wake up. A lot of times I wake up before my alarm. My alarm is my really alarm. Woo, you need to get the hell up, So 5 a.m. comes along. If I'm not awake, I'm definitely awake there. I'm like, oh shit, I slept in. I usually get up before then. So I go to the gym and, I go home. My wife goes to the gym as well. She's pregnant, by the way. So, we have that looking forward to. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. So she's due in December, and we do the gym thing. We have breakfast together. We have conversations. And then we both kind of do our own thing. She's running her own business. I'm running multiple businesses, doing a lot of content, doing a lot of podcasting. And, my day's pretty long. But when I get home, we really put our phones away. And we want to every single night. Sometimes it doesn't work. We do run multiple companies. And sometimes you can't. And you don't beat yourself up for it. Mm-hmm. You have to understand, like, hey, tomorrow's a better day. Tomorrow's another day. Things happen. Okay. But as long as you are consistent with that, putting away your phone at least 30 minutes before bed, I suggest 60, and no screens, 30 to 60 minutes before bed is the most important thing that you can do for your mind, because it allows your mind to relax. It takes the blue light away. It allows you to properly let out those hormones and chemicals to sleep, and you will not be inundated with stressful shit from this or whatever you're watching on TV. This is the most detrimental thing to society that has ever happened. This and social media. Most detrimental thing. You guys are mostly watching on social media. Does it have positive benefits? Absolutely. Are there a lot of negatives? Yes, there really are. And you have to limit it. I would say an hour before bed, put everything away and write or read, not on a tablet. Mm-hmm. Pen and paper, people. I'm old school. I'm writing stuff down. Pen and paper, write things down. There you go. So we have our notepads. You're writing things down and you're reading things on print. that is extremely beneficial to your brain. So do that. That is how I stay extremely focused on what I need to do. And my nighttime writing, by the way, is my plan for the next day. Of course, I have my schedule on my calendar, but if there are things I need to accomplish, I can write those out at the end of my day. You know, maybe I missed something today. Tonight, I'll write it down and say, I need to do these things. And then if I don't get through them, why didn't I get through them? What happened during my day that sidetracked me? Was it because I actually got busy and had to deal with something? Or was I scrolling on social media? Or was I watching TV? Or was I whatever? Doing something that I shouldn't have been doing, not being intentional with my time. That's where I think people lose focus. And people are like, oh, it must be easy for you guys. You're successful. You have money. You have this. Like, you don't understand the idea of delayed gratitude and delayed reward, right? You have to suffer for it. If you don't suffer for it, you're never going to appreciate it, really. And you're probably not going to be able to get to the level that you really know you can without putting in those suffer points.
And, you know, okay, let's talk about that because, you know, I don't even remember who said it. Many people said it that, you know, do the hard shit first. Do the shit that you don't want to do first.
Mm-hmm.
And for people, they say, well, I'm broke. Well, do the stuff that's going to make you money first.
Mm-hmm.
And then do all the other stuff. Like for me, I know I have a certain way I do things. I have certain posts that I do for reasons because it's intentional, intention and attention. But if I don't talk to people about my book, about my coaching program, about my coffee, I'm not making money. And if I'm not making money, I can't do other things. But I see a lot of people, they do everything else but the hard shit first. You know, they want to go on TikTok and make funny videos, but they're hungry. And I'm like, but you got to do stuff that you got to do the hard shit first. So talking about that is, you know, making sure that you're doing the important stuff first, and then everything else can come later.
Well, and that's what it is. It's delayed reward. You have to understand that you cannot have it all right now. Most of the young people in this country, in the Western culture, have been brought up to have everything on demand. You have information on demand. You have entertainment on demand. Richard, back in the day, me and you had to wait for the next episode of a thing to come back on TV, right? To watch that sitcom or whatever. We couldn't binge watch it on Netflix for freaking 3 weeks straight to watch every single season of every episode, you know? So being able to understand that, you know, doing the hard things first, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's like I did in business. What did I have to do? I had to sleep in my office. That was hard. I had to not pay my bills. That was hard. I had to not pay for groceries. That was hard. I had to not ask for help. I don't like asking for help. It's one of my flaws. You know, I don't ask people for help even when I really need it. And I don't think it's necessarily good because people do want to help you, you know, friends and family, they do want to give you assistance, especially with the military and law enforcement community. Please, God, ask me for help. Any of my brothers, any of you men or women out there that want to talk, get me on social media. It's literally my name, Tomo Marjanovic. Put it on there, DM me. I try to answer every single one of my DMs, even at almost 100,000 followers. I will communicate with you. You know what I mean? So doing the hard things first. I go to the gym first thing in the morning. Can I go later? Of course I can. Why do I go at 5:36 in the morning? It's not convenient for me. Would I like to sleep more? Probably. Would I like to eat breakfast first? I don't eat before I train. I train fasted. I like being hungry. I like suffering to get that in me. That's something that I strive for every single day. You know, I'm doing legitimately between this podcast and another podcast and filming content for social media. I'm doing almost 6-7 hours of video content time today. That's mentally draining, Richard, as you know. If you do 2 podcasts in a row, your brain's kind of mush. It's tough, you know? So
especially if you don't have a good guest, but a good host.
Yeah, or if you're not a good host, or if you don't have a good guest, yeah, it can be rough. You know, so doing the hard things first. My really good friend and one of my business partners' name's AJ Sims. Everybody calls him Cement Factory. He's a very you probably know him, Richard. He's a very well-known, world-renowned bodybuilding coach. Has coached numerous bodybuilders all over the place. His social media on Instagram is @CementFactory. When you see a picture of him, you'll know who he is. But he says it every single day. He'll text me. He texted me this morning. Almost every single day, he'll text me a voicemail. It's a beautiful day, brother. Just straight gratitude, right? Praise God. Very Christian man. And he says, do the hard things first every single day. And he does, first thing in the morning, he will do a red light sauna, suffering, hot red light sauna. Then he will do a cold plunge in 39-degree or less water. And then he will do his cardio before he even has breakfast. And he's like, that is the best way to start my day because the day can't get any damn worse, can it? I just sweat my ass off, then jumped in ice water, then did my cardio, and now I get to reward myself for breakfast. Oh, and then I have to work out. That guy is an animal. I went and stayed with him for 4 or 5 days in Oklahoma where he lives, and that's how I started my day every day. And I'll tell you what, I never felt better because I did the hard things first. The rest of the day is easy.
But then, and by the way, I love your IG. Love it. But a lot of people, they'll watch your channel and they'll watch the full video and then swipe up to the next thing. They don't put it into practice. Whatever you're teaching, I'm a big reader. Like I said, I'm a 9th grade dropout, but I've read over 6,000 books. I got 15 books going right now as we speak, and 2 audio books. But if I'm going to read a book, I want to put it into action. I want to put whatever I'm learning into actual work. When they say it, if Gary Vee tells me this is what you need to do today, well, that's what I'm going to do today because I want to put it into action. But I think a lot of us, we want to go to all these, go all these shows. We want to go to all these conferences, but we learn a lot, but we never put it into action. So talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, action is the only thing that really matters. We see all kinds of theory. I challenge people constantly. And, you're not going to implement everything. You can't. It's not possible to implement every single thing that you read and learn. But if you go to a business conference, I am going to one actually Wednesday. I'm going to Patrick Bet-David's Valuetainment. The Vault is what it's called.
I love Patrick Bet-David.
So me and PBD are friendly. I have been to a football game with him. I've been to the Vault before. He and I interact a little bit on social media. He'll send me some encouraging messages. The guy,
and he's also a veteran.
Yes, he is. Yeah, Army veteran.
Yep.
And an ex-bodybuilder. Not competitive, but he was bodybuilding back in the day. And that guy has made a huge success of himself. So I'm going to that conference. If I don't leave that conference after that weekend, because I'm there Wednesday to Saturday, and I'll be at his house on Saturday night. So I'll be having cigars and a drink and having some good conversations with him and the rest of the CEO masterminds there at his house. If I don't leave there implementing one thing, it was a failure. Why did I even go? Why did you read that book? You know what I mean? One of my favorite things in the world that I read recently, it's a book called Who Not How. It's by Dan Sullivan.
Yep.
I'm part of his strategic coaching thing. Extremely intelligent guy. All of these coaching things are amazing. I suggest everybody do as many as they can. Don't just stick to one. Everybody has different things to teach. That's why I'm going to Valuetainment. It's a whole different coaching thing, but it's different perspectives. So that Who Not How book was massive for me. Did I implement every single stitch of everything in there? No. But I learned how to better delegate and how to find the proper who's, the proper people for the proper hows, right? So I need something built. I can learn how to do it myself, but that's a waste of my time. I'm not good at that. Could I learn it? Sure. That's what I had to do in the beginning. But now I'm in a position where I can find the proper person to do the proper job and do it the best possible way, where I don't waste my time, where I don't have all these headaches in implementing that. So, going into conferences, going into reading books, implement one thing. Don't try to implement everything. But if you can't take away one point and change something in your life for the positive, you failed. Read the book again or go to the conference again, because everything is constantly adapting. Business is constantly adapting. Life is constantly adapting. If you're not adapting with it, you're left in the dust, people. You better wake up.
And like last week, Alex Hermosi did it, probably one of the best ever conferences online. 300, I think like 300,000 people showed up, and so many people are shitting on him because of how he did it, because he gave it away for free and didn't ask for anything. But my thing is, all the people that I see shitting, I'm a big fan, by the way. I like him because he's a man of faith, and I appreciate that. But a lot of the people are shitting on him, but the people that are going to shit on him are not going to put anything that he talked about into practice. And for me, I got both books. I actually got one of the first copies that before it even came out. So I'm implementing it the last couple of weeks. But I think, all those people that were out of the 300,000 people that showed up, how many people are actually going to implement any of it? Probably 1%, maybe.
Do you want to know why these people talk shit? I learned this recently, and it really made sense to me. These people talk shit because what is happening is something is being highlighted in their own life that they can't change or will not suffer enough to change. That's what happens. So when they look at somebody like Alex Hermosi, who is wildly successful, who does not need to make any more money, okay? Acquisitions, what is it, acquisition.com? I think this is a big one now. Yeah, so acquisition.com, he is making money hand over fist. He doesn't care about the money now. Now he's trying to help other people and build his personal platform so he can have a legacy. And he will. He will have a legacy now. Because after you make a certain amount of money, money doesn't matter. It no longer is relevant. Is it good to make more? Sure. But are you going to only think about money? No. There's a point when that switch flips. You go into wealth, and then there gets to a point where it's like, I have enough wealth. Now let's flip the switch and let's go into legacy. So the people that are hating on him, they are angry because he is highlighting something in their life that maybe they didn't pursue, maybe they didn't follow through with, maybe they were too scared to try, and they see a guy like him. He's a knucklehead. He's smart, but he's a knucklehead, right? If you saw him in his early life, the dude was a knucklehead. He big into the gym. He had a great gym business. He still bodybuilds. Now he's in great shape. But people look at him like, how did he get there? And then instead of listening to his words and saying, let me get one little piece to implement from this guy who has done this, they immediately go into hater mode and say, well, you know what? This guy is doing this wrong, and I don't want to do this. All it did was highlight their insecurity in themselves. And until they get over that, until they get over their own ego and realize, hey, you don't have it together, and can put something from somebody else. I look to learn from everybody. I'm looking to learn from you, Richard. I'm going to come away something from this conversation, and I'm going to walk away and say, I like what Richard was doing there. I want to implement that. If you don't look at every single conversation like that, what are you even doing? So the hater mentality, all it is jealousy, really. And all it is insecurity, really. But that's the difference between somebody like me and you who can look at somebody that's more successful than us and say, what can I learn from him? Compared to the people that look at that person with success and say, oh, can I swear on here?
Yeah, of course.
Fuck that guy. It's either what can I learn or fuck that guy.
But it's it's the same people that are going to talk shit about him that the next week their videos are going to look exactly like his.
Listen, I mean,
if you're going to talk shit about somebody, don't imitate them.
If they need to talk shit about him to make themselves feel better for a moment, but then they're gonna mimic him, that's imitation's the best form of flattery. Yeah, go after it, guys. Let's do it.
So let me ask you a question, because since I knew you were going to come on, if your podcast numbers have jumped, it's because of me. Because I listen to every episode. Some of them 2 or 3 times. I love the YouTube channel. I love the newest one I think I just saw was about being intentional with your mind, your body. So talk to us about how do we, talk to us about your podcast and talk to us about what you got going on now.
Yeah, so the podcast is something that kind of developed from me just doing live Facebook videos. I was just doing live videos on the treadmill, doing cardio, and I just wanted to kind of like just talk. It was almost like a therapy session to me. And honestly, podcasting really is a therapy thing to me. It is therapeutic for me to talk to people or to just sit here and talk at the world and give my thoughts out. It's a way for me to express myself. I very much appreciate anybody watching. I never expected to get the numbers that we have on Spotify, the numbers on Apple Podcasts. Our YouTube is still developing, and I think it's growing every day. But the podcast is called Tomo Talks, kind of like a spin from TED Talks. But it's Tomo Talks, Tomo Talks. My Instagram is at Tomo_Marjanovic. Same thing for the rest of the social media platforms. What is it called? It's not Twitter anymore. It's X. Formerly Twitter, X. I'm on LinkedIn and everything. I'm not too active on LinkedIn. But yeah, I mean, if you guys want to interact with me, my YouTube channel, I'm trying to put out more and more content every day. Right behind this wall behind me is our podcast studio. And we are filming a bunch of content today in there. And the new season of the podcast will actually be starting in a couple weeks as soon as our furniture gets in. So that is a whole room specifically for a podcast here in my corporate office. So we're really excited about that. We want to put out good content. We want to put out good information. We want to make sure that people understand where we're coming from when it comes to health, wellness, lifestyle, masculinity, relationships. I'm a very opinionated person. I feel like my opinions are pretty good, but I also want everybody that sees me on social media, don't just hate on me or shit on me. Give me a debate. Give me your point of view because I actually want to hear it. I will learn something from your points. So, just like anybody watching this episode with Richard, you don't like something that we say, man, comment on it. Give us your input because we want to see it because you may change our mindset.
Yep.
It's very possible, and as a viewer, be adult enough to have an open mind and understand that people have different opinions. Don't just immediately attack somebody's opinion because you disagree with it or because you have a different one. Look at it objectively and say, why do they think the way they think and why is it different than me? When you start looking at it like that, you're going to learn a lot more in life. You're not going to be so rigid in the way that you think.
Yep. And, for me, I put some controversial content out sometimes. But if you're in my comments, I'm going to say thank you for reading. Thank you even just for responding. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate your outlook. And a lot of people will be like, wait a minute, I just shit all over him. But now all of a sudden he's saying thank you. And now I made friends from that. So, that's something I've learned from Gary Vee to try to learn a little bit from everybody. So we already know how to find you. So if I'm a 54, going to be on 55-year-old guy. And now I know that pre-diabetic, overweight, all that good stuff. I know how to get back in shape, but there's a lot of people who don't know how to get back in shape. So what are 3 simple, quick things somebody can do to start getting back to being healthy? I don't care about the bodybuilding. I don't care, but just to be healthy, to be able to play with their kids and their grandkids again.
So I'll tell everybody, and I don't care if you're 20 years old, 50 years old, or 80 years old, get your lab work done. It's something that is not pushed enough by the medical community. And I don't mean just the basic lab panel that you get for a health insurance or for a life insurance policy. Find a very good clinic or a very good doctor that understands holistic medicine. Get a full blood panel done. Even if you don't need anything, at least you know what is going on inside your body. So, we've become to clinics like mine, Aspire Rejuvenation Clinic. We will look at everything from your CBC, comprehensive blood count panel, to your metabolic panel, to all of your hormone levels, to the way that your body is reacting from a diabetic standpoint. We see everything. Blood is the window to your health. So you will be able to actually move forward and see, oh shit, is there a problem? Or, oh shit, I'm healthy. We have both come to us, So everybody, I don't care what age you are, start getting your blood work done. The best thing that ever happened to me, like Richard said, was me being pushed to get my labs done at 19 years old. That pushed me in the direction where I'm in now. So from a health perspective, number one, men and women, if you're under the age of like 40, maybe 30, first thing you need to do, start exercising. That's number one. Start exercising. The eating healthy thing will come with it, because once you start exercising and seeing your body changing, you're going to want to start eating healthier. Diet and exercise are absolutely monumentally beneficial, and you need to prioritize those things. Number one, that has to happen. If you're over the age of 35, 40, and you're finding yourself struggling, you're finding yourself in a place where, okay, I'm not gaining muscle, or I'm losing muscle, I'm gaining body fat, I feel slow, I feel sluggish, everything hurts, those things that happen with age, right? I will tell you right now that I would say 90 out of 100 of you more than likely have a detrimental hormone deficiency that is starting right around that age. 35 to 40 is when it starts, and it only progressively gets worse. So people think hormone therapy, they think testosterone, they think what? Steroids. Hormones are naturally occurring in your body, and they are like the motor oil in your engine, right? How long can you run a vehicle without motor oil? You can't. It'll seize up and it'll break. How long can you run a vehicle with very bad motor oil? For a while, actually, believe it or not. But the damage that it does to your body progressively through those days, months, years of running that vehicle, that motor with bad motor oil, is the exact same thing it's doing to your body. So when you look at it that way, oh shit, the motor oil in my body, my blood, my hormones, the things that run all of my body processes, if those aren't good, you're not going to be healthy. And a lot of what the medical community doesn't tell you is that that is the number one cause for metabolic disease and for issues as you start aging. Because as you age, hormones decline. As you age, all these health issues start happening. You don't see 20 and 25-year-olds with high blood pressure, cholesterol issues, unable to lose body fat, diabetes. For the most part, you don't see it. So why don't you see it? Guess what? Their hormones are optimal and their body is performing at peak performance. And that can be achieved at a later age. You just have to test it and recognize it. So anybody over the age 35, 40, get your blood work done like everybody else. See if you have a problem. And if we can help you, if my clinic can help you, reach out to us, aspirerejuvenation.com. We will be happy to take a look for you. We'll be happy to, get you where you need to be. It could be something as simple as a little pill. It could be something more that you need. But guess what? What's the point of living until old age if the last 30 years of your life was freaking miserable? This is about living healthy, living optimally. That's what we want to do. That's our whole purpose and goal in what we're doing in the medical space.
I love it. So guys, make sure you check out Tomo. Like I said, make sure you check out his IG. It's fire. Make sure you check out his YouTube channel. Amazing. I just watched the video right before we came on. So I'm a big fan. So brother, I just want to say thank you. We finally got together. I know we were talking about it forever. So I'm just grateful, and I'm so grateful and blessed that you and your bride are having a little one coming in December. So I just think everything is coming amazing. And I just want to say thank you for your friendship, brother.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing with this podcast. It's amazing. The guests you have, the influence that you're getting. This is really important. These conversations are very important for people to start listening to. So I'm really happy that everybody is watching this, that we are getting this information out there.
I love it. And guys, we just started our new coaching program. I am personally coaching 5 people to get healthy mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. So if you guys are interested in getting healthy in all aspects of your life, just let me know. And also, guys, I'm a big Joel Osteen guy. And he says that you can either be the victim or you can be the victor. So guys, if you're listening to this, please choose to be the victor and stop being the victim. I love you guys. Have an amazing week. I will talk to you tomorrow. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is but up. Tomo, have an amazing week, and thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.